Worrying new video has emerged of Prince Harry away from his wife and two children in Aspen, Colorado, on a boys' holiday with his close friend and polo player Nacho Figueras, where he looks worse for wear and quite extraordinary in a way, given the scrutiny on both him and his marriage, that he thought being in this type of state in front of the cameras.
Prince Harry, a name that once symbolized royal duty, tradition, and responsibility. Today, that same name is increasingly linked to controversy, contradiction, and unanswered questions. Right now, a video is circulating online, filmed in Aspen, Colorado, that has reignited serious concern around the Duke of Sussex. Snowy mountains, a luxury getaway, and Prince Harry. But noticeably absent are Meghan Markle and their two children. What makes this footage especially troubling isn't just where Harry is, it's how he appears. Unfiltered, unbothered, and seemingly unconcerned about how this moment would be perceived, despite intense scrutiny on his marriage and public image. The timing couldn't be worse. Christmas is just days away, a season Meghan Markle has repeatedly described as deeply important to family and togetherness. And yet, Harry is on a boys' trip, surrounded by friends, while cameras quietly capture what many are calling a revealing glimpse into his current state of mind. So the question isn't simply why Harry went to Aspen. The real question is this: is this just a harmless break, or a silent signal that something much deeper is unfolding?
Complexities that I don't really know about. The only thing I do know is that if you walk around LA or New York City, it's really strange now. It just stinks of weed everywhere you go. And Harry's been pretty open, talking about how he uses drugs. Of course, this is the core issue with the whole issue with the Heritage Foundation that are trying to get the immigration records reopened. That Harry has talked quite openly, not just in his memoir. It's often said, well, in his memoir, he admitted that he'd used cocaine and that he'd used magic mushrooms. And that is true. He did admit those things in his memoir. But also, do you remember he did a interview with Gabor Mate before to promote the book, Dan? And did he say that drugs were like a windscreen wiper for his mind or something? There was some kind of, hokum, new age nonsense about how, taking these, frankly, elite, questionable legality drugs were, wonderful for his mental health and his psychic health, which I think was an incredibly irresponsible, message for Prince Harry to be putting out anyway, for somebody, who is meant to be a great mental health campaigner, when we know that, heavy use of cannabis and these other drugs can trigger psychosis. And, that's not disputed. I don't, at least it's not widely disputed.
What stands out here isn't just the trip, it's the optics. Prince Harry isn't a private citizen who can disappear without consequence. He has spent years emphasizing emotional awareness, family unity, and the dangers of media intrusion. And yet, here he is, fully aware of cameras, appearing in a condition that invites speculation. Many viewers are asking, if media exposure is so damaging, why allow this moment to happen at all? Was this a lapse in judgment, or a sign that controlling the narrative is no longer a priority? And then there's Christmas. By most accounts, Meghan Markle places enormous emotional weight on the holiday. For Harry to be physically and symbolically absent at this moment has raised eyebrows across royal watch circles. Coincidence? Or confirmation of growing distance? When patterns start to form, people stop calling it chance and start calling it a message.
They completely undermine their own message by, on that very day, posting the announcement of this Cookie Queens documentary to Meghan's Instagram story, including loads of faces of 5 to 12-year-old girls who are apparently the people that they're trying to protect from social media. So again, it's like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. I don't think Meghan gives a damn about shutting down social media or big tech giants. She gives a damn about being able to share her work projects on Instagram wherever she wants. But of course, Harry does care. And again, it's the clashing narratives between the two, which just makes things really messy. Really messy. I mean, that was one of the stories there. Obviously, the faces were hearted up. But look at that. On the day that they're saying children should not be on social media, we should ban it. There she is, pushing her documentary, which does use a whole load of 5 to 12-year-old girls. Now, is that okay? How is it any different to being on social media if you're putting all of these kids in a film?
But this is the problem they keep coming up against, isn't it, Dan? Is that there's this sort of hypocrisy at the core of it. And, I suppose a night.
This is where the story shifts from gossip to consequence. Prince Harry hasn't merely acknowledged past drug use, he has openly framed it as beneficial to his mental health. Those comments, once seen as radical honesty, are now resurfacing in a far more serious context. Harry has positioned himself as a global mental health advocate, but medical experts have long warned that heavy cannabis use and psychedelics can trigger psychosis, especially in vulnerable individuals. That contradiction alone has drawn criticism. Now add legal scrutiny into the mix. The Heritage Foundation is pressure testing Harry's U.S. immigration status, questioning whether admissions made in his memoir and interviews were properly disclosed. Suddenly, what sounded like openness now looks like liability. Viewers are asking difficult questions. Was this responsible messaging from a public figure? Would any other immigrant receive the same leniency? And did Harry underestimate the long-term impact of his words? For a man who speaks so often about accountability, this moment is forcing one very uncomfortable reckoning.
Date, but in a new Substack that you have posted today, Tom, you've got some insight into this, and you think it is probably the hope of this Diana film, this long-discussed Diana film, that is keeping Netflix sweet on Harry and Meghan. A Hollywood source has told you it's hard to see at this point how and why the relationship endures unless there is something juicy and possibly Diana shape being dangled. Another source said it's certainly not been a hugely productive deal thus far. Meghan's TV show hasn't done anything on the Netflix charts, but if there's something Diana related indeed coming, you could see that as something Netflix would certainly maintain the relationship for at a price. The source added that Archewell would likely not have had offers of note, so Netflix is likely not paying much in terms of overhead for the first look. But I just find it nuts, Tom, that in 1 week, the week before Christmas, with Harry away on a lads trip, all of a sudden we get 2 announcements of films, despite the fact that the first film that they announced about 2 years ago, Meet Me at the Lake, is still not even into production yet. The business strategy, the PR strategy is just all over the place. I also wonder what these filmmakers and these novelists are thinking, believing that getting Harry and Meghan on board as producers on your project.
This is where public trust begins to fracture. On one hand, Harry and Meghan advocate fiercely against children's exposure to social media. On the other, Meghan promotes a documentary featuring children from the very age group they claim to protect. The backlash isn't subtle. Many see this as selective morality, rules applied when convenient, ignored when visibility or promotion is at stake. What complicates matters further is the apparent disconnect between Harry and Meghan themselves. Harry appears genuinely concerned about digital harm. Meghan, critics argue, seems more focused on promoting her work. That leads to uncomfortable questions. Are they truly aligned on their values? Or are 2 very different agendas operating under one brand? When messaging becomes inconsistent, credibility erodes. And in the Harry and Meghan ecosystem, credibility is already under intense pressure.
Weird, but it just keep coming back to those pictures of Prince Harry where he finally looks happy because he's on the slopes, he's playing polo, he's away from Meghan. And I can't help but think, Tom, could he ever have imagined that this is how Megxit would work out?
Once hailed as a groundbreaking partnership, the Netflix deal is now facing quiet skepticism. Meghan's series failed to make a significant impact. Major projects announced years ago remain stalled. According to insiders, the only thing sustaining Netflix's interest may be the long-discussed Princess Diana project. Diana's story is emotionally powerful, globally resonant, and commercially valuable, but it's also deeply sensitive. Using her legacy as leverage carries real risk. If audiences perceive exploitation rather than tribute, backlash could be severe. Meanwhile, the optics grow worse. Harry on a lad's trip, set-in film announcements, a scattered PR approach. The impression forming in Hollywood is that strategy is reactive, not deliberate. In an industry driven by confidence and momentum, hesitation is costly, and right now, momentum appears to be slipping.
I think a lot of people have missed the real story here, which is that, number one, Meghan demanded that her father be filmed in hospital. That was a revelation in Caroline Graham's piece for the Mail on Sunday. And it was just so shocking to me. Some person from the hospital barges into the room, forces him to sign a contract. His newly exposed, amputated leg is there for the world to see. A camera comes out. And presumably in Harry and Meghan's twisted world where they presume that Caroline Graham is some nefarious force out to screw them over, even though actually she's been friends with Thomas Markle for the past 5 years. It's to show that the letter actually got into Thomas Markle's hands rather than the hands of the terrible Daily Mail. But it still was creepy and weird and very uncomfortable, I think, to force him into that situation. But then, and remember, this is what Meghan's team themselves leaked to the Sunday Times and Roy and Nika. This wasn't coming from Caroline Graham, who claims that she has not read the letter and that Thomas has told her nothing about the contents of the letter. So none of the contents of the letter are being briefed by the Markle side of things, the Mail side of things. Instead, they're leaked by Meghan to Roy and Nika to say the letter was an attack on Thomas for giving media interviews years ago. And I mean, I'm still speechless about this. I genuinely am, because firstly, the hypocrisy of the fact that, okay, Meghan, but since then, Harry's written a book, you've given an interview to Oprah where you completely trashed your father, you've done the Harry and Meghan Netflix series where for a big wad of cash, you trashed your entire family, including your sister, including your half-brother. So there's all of that hypocrisy, but then it was just...
That line lands harder than expected. He finally looks happy. On the slopes, playing polo, laughing with friends, and crucially, alone. At this point, the conversation shifts from headlines to psychology. Is Harry escaping pressure, or is this the version of life where he feels most himself? If so, the follow-up question becomes unavoidable. What or who does he need distance from to feel that way? Fans who once celebrated a modern fairy tale are now watching it unravel in real time, not with explosions, but with quiet absences. This segment crosses from controversy into genuine discomfort. A hospital room, medical trauma, cameras present. Regardless of where one stands on Meghan, this moment disturbed many viewers. Public reaction here is less divided and more emotional. Boundaries, people argue, should exist, especially during moments of vulnerability. When viewed alongside past interviews, memoir revelations, and the Netflix series, accusations of hypocrisy gain traction. If privacy matters, why selectively breach it? The narrative becomes murky. Victimhood blurs, sympathy shifts, and the audience is left asking who is truly being protected and who is being used. This controversy doesn't just damage public image, it reshapes how the entire story is interpreted. When all the pieces come together, the Aspen footage, drug admissions, social media contradictions, Netflix uncertainty, and deeply personal family conflict, a clear reality emerges. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are at a crossroads. Public patience is wearing thin, media scrutiny is relentless, and every action now carries amplified meaning. The coming months may determine whether they regain control of their narrative or lose it entirely. Now, we want to hear from you. Was the Aspen trip harmless or a warning sign? Is this a PR breakdown or a personal crisis? And will Netflix continue to wait? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. If you found this breakdown valuable, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this is where raw, unfiltered celebrity news continues.